Patients instinctively want to trust their doctors. Oh, if the doctor says it's just, in my head, or it's just heavy periods,
Anxiety.
or just this, I'll believe them. And then you sort of maybe can gaslight yourself into thinking that actually there's nothing wrong.
Hello, and welcome back to another week of Calling in Sick. I'm your host, Alex Wilderson. Boy, do I have a guest of all guests for you guys today. This guest and I first met each other because he stitched my most viral video ever, where I basically called out how people with chronic illnesses are way too often diagnosed or misdiagnosed with anxiety. It's kind of a catch-all diagnosis. He stitched the video, gave the explanation, and further deep dive on why this phenomenon is happening and why it's so common. If that doesn't ring a bell, his name is Dr. Karan Rajan. You also might know him from his amazing book, This Book May Save Your Life, or as your own doctor. He's an NHS doctor and surgeon, content creator and author, and educator. He's really well known for his dry humor, his wit, and his ability to take really complicated topics and make them into distilled, digestible, bite-sized pieces of content for all of us to digest. I originally found his page when I was scrolling Instagram and TikTok, trying to find some random cure for constipation. If you're chronically ill, I know you've been there as well. And he had some great videos that I ended up trying out what he suggested and found some success with. So it is a treat and my honor to have him on Calling in Sick today. We get into some super interesting topics, like the dark side of being dismissed or written off by the medical system and the long-term consequences and effects it can have on a patient. We get into the nitty-gritty of what happens when you turn to the internet, the good, the bad, and the really ugly and the scary. We also give you guys tidbits on how to properly research whatever is going on in your body without giving yourself anxiety or accidentally poisoning yourself. And then we round it out by talking about some of the most popular and viral misconceptions that social media has brought on about the medical world. But before we dive into this week's episode, you know what I'm about to say? Housekeeping. If you haven't already, please follow, like, and subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on YouTube, anywhere you get your audios, or on social media. On social media, I share a lot about my own journey and what I've tried, had success with, and failed with for managing my chronic illnesses. And you guys know I love to ask a question for you guys to comment on every week. So this week, I'm wondering, what is something you've seen on the internet, you've had curiosity if it's real or not, put it in the comments, we'll try to problem solve and figure out, should you try this at home or not? So usually for my Alex's picks of the week, I do the science so you don't have to, and I tell you what works or doesn't work, and then try to get you guys a discount code. But this week, it's going to be different because it's almost my birthday, and I'm hosting a virtual birthday party that all of y'all are invited to. We're going to hang out, I'm going to do some live Q&A, and we're going to stream a movie together. Duvet day themed because you guys know me, I fucking love a duvet day. And speaking of duvet days, that's what all my Alex's picks are about this week. If you've been following me on social, you know that the number one thing about a good duvet day is that there's no urgency. That you're inviting and welcoming all the feel-goods, all the happiness, all the joy, all the recovery humanly possible so that you can give yourself over to that rest and recovery that's necessary to try to heal a little bit or get some energy back if you're chronically ill. One thing I've been doing recently is a new mantra. And I, every single day, probably 4 or 5 times a day, sit down and go, okay, universe, okay, God, show me how good it can get. Some call that prayer, some call that manifesting, whatever floats your boat works for me. Well, because I like a little bit of the woo-woo, I might be a girl of science, but I also like a little bit of the woo-woo because I've seen it really, really help me with my health. Placebo effect or not, I don't give a shit. I love when things help me feel better. So this week I'm picking Lotus Way. They have these awesome manifestation drops. I know it sounds silly, but don't knock it until you try it because it's truly helped your girl. Every time I've used them, something amazing has happened that day. And I'm not just saying like, oh, I'm noticing something good in that day. Like something amazing has happened. Like getting cast on a show, getting a network deal for my podcast. So give it a whirl. Link in the description below. It'll give you a link and discount code in the description below. And because every duvet day needs about 17 different beverages at any given time, my second pick of the week is a matcha latte. Now, I am new to the matcha game, so please forgive me if this is not the best matcha on the market. I am obsessed with this matcha. It is the strawberry matcha latte by Clever. It is divine. It tastes like Special K cereal from the 90s. Chef's kiss. If you need a tutorial on how to make it probably improperly. You can go find it on YouTube Shorts or on my socials. I don't care if I made it wrong because it tastes so good. And I have a discount code for you guys to give it a try too. It's A. Wildison. I have no idea how much it will give you all of. My discount code is A. Wildison. I think it gives you 10 or 15% off. I will confirm and put it in the description below, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And my last pick of the week, because it's probably the most essential part of a duvet day, is of course a duvet. Well, this week I'm partnering with Rest. They have a delicious duvet. Working on a discount code for you guys. When I get it, the link will be here and on my socials. Shoot me a message, comment on this video if you want to join us for the B-Day party of all B-Day parties. Chronic Illness Girl Edition, Duvet Day style. And without further ado, let's dive on into this week's episode. Love you guys. Hello and welcome back to another week of Calling in Sick. How are you guys? I have the best guest ever today. You probably know him from his viral social media where he explains the unknown and myth busts all of these different things for us in the health world. Dr. Karan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
Thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I've been an avid watcher of your content for a while and love the book that you've released. Thank you for making health seem more accessible and understandable for us laymen out here.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I want to do. I mean, I've never been much of like a learner where I just sit through lectures and textbooks, and I always like people to explain things to me in a simple way. I'm a simple creature, and I just want to share the stuff I learn with other people.
I love it. Did you find yourself doing that prior to social media? Like, were you teaching in classes or anything like that? Or maybe give us a walk down of who you are today and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a doctor in the UK. I've been a doctor for around 12 and a bit years now. And even though I've been a doctor since, those 12 years, I've been educating, and my sort of medical career started when medical school started. So I've been doing medicine in some form, learning, teaching, operating, whatever, for, the best part of 18 years, you could say.
Wow.
Medicine has been my life. So since I was in medical school, I've always been interested in educating and teaching in some way. And even my own social media journey, I know TikTok sort of blew in popularity in 2020 when the whole world was facing a lockdown. But I actually started posting educational videos on YouTube back in 2011. So
I had no idea. That's amazing.
Yeah, the Wild West, the bad old days of social media and YouTube. That's where it all started for me. So I've been doing this for some time.
What was the first bug that bit where you're like, okay, I think I'm good at this and I want to double down and keep doing this? Was there like a specific topic that you were covering or video that just went viral, or walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, viral had a different meaning back then, but
Valid.
Certainly when I was making that content on YouTube, and I didn't even call it content, I just said, let me upload this video onto YouTube, and it was how to educate people on, medical students, nursing students, physios, and how to do certain health and medical examinations, how to do a suture, how to, examine for lumps, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the videos got maybe 30,000 views. It was like a 7-minute explainer on how to do an abdominal examination, picking up signs of disease and things like that. And I remember getting all these comments from Nigeria, the US, Canada, Australia, the UK, India, and such a global audience watching this. And I thought, wow, there's a video that I made in the UK, and I posted it, and it's reaching a global audience. And that was a light bulb moment for me, thinking, this is pretty cool, because I love being in front of the camera. I love doing this sort of simulation. I love the sort of acting, as it were. Yeah. I also love the editing, the producing, getting the camera stuff right, the whole shebang. And I was like, this is so fun. But it was a lot of time. And I remember, that time we had to hire camera equipment from the University Film Society, which they allowed us to do for like a £2 charge for the day. We had to hire our own kind of, get our own. We didn't have mics, so we had to buy some cheap mics from Amazon. Just the time, it took sort of 12, 13 hours to edit one whole video. There's a lot of dead time put into it, a lot of capital. And even my dad at some point was like, are you making any money from YouTube? Like, you're spending literally days doing it. And, I remember being so happy when I got £15, which is probably like 20 odd dollars for 1 month of work. And I was like, wow.
I'm doing it.
Yeah.
It's such a rewarding feeling though, when you get to see all the people that you can connect with and really reach and have a real impact, I think, in their lives. Sometimes it can feel menial and it's, a small piece of advice, but it actually means the world to them. And I think that's, at least for me, like that has been one of the most rewarding things out of this whole process.
Yeah, because especially when it comes to health, when you make an educational video or someone with a health condition watches a video online, it may be a niche topic, it may not get the views, but it speaks to them and could change their life or give them some useful insights that could help them or someone that they know. And what do you put as the price or the value on one person's life? It's priceless. So even if a video gets 1,000 views, but 2 or 3 people's lives are majorly impacted, that's the metric that matters, not the view count.
I totally agree. My sign of success for myself is somebody being like, this changed my life. Like I could care less about how many views something gets. I just want to know that like somebody else is feeling more secure or safe in their own body. That's really all we have.
Yeah, I mean, I call these things the vanity metrics, the shares, the likes, the followers, all that stuff. And I think everyone, when they make educational videos or make any videos online, you sometimes get caught up into this trap of
it's easy to.
Worrying about that. Everyone does that. And anyone who says they don't is a liar.
Totally agree.
There is a switch at some point you realize, actually, you care about the impact.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm so glad and I'm not surprised at all that that's exactly what carries you on through all of this. You can tell in your videos, you deeply care about the people that you're helping. And like little old me was just watching one of your videos a year and a half ago and thought, oh my gosh, like I can make some really simple changes in my life and feel better. And I did. And I now do feel a little bit better. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for making an impact on my life.
No, that's amazing to hear. That's exactly what I'm trying to do.
I love it. You also are an author. Can we talk a little bit about your book?
Yeah. So I mean, I've always written like blogs and stuff like that. Had a newsletter. I would write like a weekly newsletter. So I enjoyed writing, storytelling, all that sort of stuff. And even the videos, I write scripts for the videos and you try and tell a good story.
Yes.
And it's really weird to write a book in an age where video dominates everything. And you think,
totally, and
people are going to have
short.
the time. Yeah, people are going to have the time to actually sit down and read a book. I mean, I think the actual rates of people going to libraries and buying books, like actual books, are at their were at their all-time low a few years back. I think it's picking up again because more people who are making videos online, creators with audiences, are actually publishing books. But for me, it was pretty cool to be asked by various publishers to consider writing a book. And I was like, wow, this is amazing as an opportunity, and to just write something which someone can buy and sit in their house for however many years, forever, and it's almost just immortalized in their house, and they pick it up and read it whenever they want. And it was great. And over the years, seeing the feedback, little reviews on Amazon, is just such a great feeling.
I'm so happy that you did that. Also, your book has these bite-sized nuggets in it that you don't have to sit down and read the whole thing in one go. There's little segments at it that you can just pull and chew on and think about as you go. And I think that that's really cool. So thank you for writing a book that's digestible for people with short attention spans like me.
Yeah, no, it's a book that I wrote that I wanted to read myself. I also sometimes have a hard time sticking to something if it's not engaging. So having bite-sized summaries, and I wanted it to sound like a piece of prose, like an actual story that someone could pick up, a lot of anecdotes from my life as a doctor, as a medical student. I wanted that to be in there because I think people want to read a book that's just not a prescriptive, you need to do this, this, and this for health. No one wants to read something like that.
No, it's not a Ben Greenfield lifespan encyclopedia of everything you need to do, which is also great. But yours is, you can see your personality and your humor, which also your humor the dry, dark humor, the way that resonates in the chronic illness space, I'm not surprised that you're such a hit in my community.
Yeah, I think that's like the British thing. People, self-deprecation, dark humor. And in medicine, particularly, I think we call it gallows humor, right? Because
Yeah.
you're in the trenches. You're not always surrounded by good news. You're breaking bad news. People are dying. There's bad stuff that happens in a hospital. There's also great stuff that happens,
True.
but a lot of bad stuff. And to get through that, you need to have not only thick skin, but often just joke about the absurdity of what you're going through. And yeah, it can be a bit abrupt and very,
Punchy.
Yeah, poignant at times, but you have to get through it somehow,
I agree. And that is a key survival mechanism. I think like comedy and humor, that's what saved me time and time again in my health journey. And, living with polyarteritis nodosa, there's been times where I have been sick as shit and not felt good at all. But I turn to stand-up comedians or I turn to funny people on TikTok, and finding ways to laugh and have light in your life, I think, is so important, and laughing about the absurdity of it all. Like, if you are dealing with 20 alarm bells going off in your body at all times, you either laugh or you cry. It's okay to cry, but might as well laugh sometimes too.
Yeah, lean into it, I guess. And,
Yeah.
I've often found that some of the patients that I've had dealings with over the years, the ones with the worst prognosis and worst outcomes, to almost stop that consuming them in those final weeks, final months, they've often turned into a caricature almost,
Yes.
oh no, this has happened again, or oh doc, you better say bye to me today because I might not be here tomorrow, and just really weird stuff. And I'm just like, did you actually say that to me? And then thinking back, I sort of get it, and I was like, that's really great, in a weird way,
It is great. I remember, and I think it's funny because seasoned doctors, I think, are familiar and comfortable with that. I remember when I had this botched spinal surgery and was temporarily paralyzed for a little bit in 2023. And I had med students rounding on me. And I made some joke about, they were doing an exam and pinching my toes. And I was like, yeah, I can't feel that. I'm not going to feel anything down there. And they got so worried that they were going to make me cry or make me upset about that. And I just was belly laughing. And I think they realized it gave them permission then to okay, this is just life in the hospital. Patients are going to have ups and downs, but you can find humor and light in it all.
Yeah, I think also it's knowing, part of that is also knowing that there are some patients out there who are experts, right? Experts in their own body and may have a greater expertise in certain chronic conditions than the doctors themselves. Because
Totally agree.
if you think about doctors, you get generalists and you get specialists, right? And you sort of generally associate specialists with having greater deep domain expertise in one specific thing. That is what a chronic disease patient is. They are a lifelong specialist in one specific thing. They've read every blog, every article, every how-to guide, seen and learned from likely dozens of doctors and other healthcare professionals. So they have got a vast array of knowledge in that condition. And I've learned over the years that lean into that, because you may learn something which could help you help them.
I love that perspective. When a doctor comes in and asks me questions about how do you, what's this like to live with that? Or how does doing XYZ actually impact you? It makes it feel like we're on the same team to address what's going on in my body, instead of us kind of going back and forth, almost sparring on who knows my body best, I guess.
Yeah. I think exactly what it needs to be. It needs to be a conversation. Two people come to the table with a willingness to let's get this right. And yeah, I think traditionally the medical model has always leaned on some degree of that paternalistic approach where it's
Agreed. Yeah.
I know everything, and I'm
Kinda
doing
insecure,
this in your best interest. So just
Yes.
try to trust me, bro type advice, where it's
Blindly believe in me.
Yeah, I'm going to do this. There may be some bad stuff that happens before it becomes good, but just trust me. Let me try this because I know what I'm doing here. And this is what the textbook says. But I think textbooks and algorithms and guidelines are great to keep 90% of the population like safe.
Yes.
But in those extremes, outside the standard deviations, there's people with chronic disease, and actually not even 90, but like beyond, smaller than 90, but beyond that 5-10%, there's a huge community of people with chronic illnesses and various other niche conditions, and they know their body best, and sometimes it may be in complete contrast to what a textbook says.
Such a good point right there. In complete contrast to what a textbook says. I recently went to Penn for a clinical study, my very first clinical study ever. And this godfather of vasculitis was looking at my nodules on my feet. And he said, I have never seen PAN nodules look like this in my entire career. And I've been looking at these things for a long, long time. Like, you just broke the textbook. And that in and of itself completely explains why chronic illness is just so complicated. I feel really lucky that I have a diagnosis. I have a few diagnoses. I still have one kind of gray box, mixed connective tissue lupus. We don't know really what it is, but I've been dealing with it since I was a little kid. But I still feel lucky that I have doctors that are willing to treat me. And I know that for many people in my community, it takes 5 to 7 years to get that diagnosis, or sometimes longer. And it's full of gaslighting and hardships and feeling just totally alone and alienated, I think, and also scared of your body. So maybe we can talk a little bit about like the dark side of being dismissed and misinformation that exists out there for patients in that cohort.
Yeah, I think, the sort of being dismissed is a huge problem. And I hope and I see the tide changing somewhat because of easier access to information and the democratization of knowledge with social media. That you can actually get communities online in TikTok, Reddit, anywhere basically now where you can gather knowledge. You get these communities of people, whether it's, chronic fatigue, and endometriosis, whatever it is, you get this sort of knowledge source. And I think people are becoming better trained themselves to combat people who might gaslight them about their condition. People are better equipped, and I think that's a good thing. Knowledge dispersion is a good thing. But, and I think generally things are changing, but the problem still exists when, for example, the first port of call for someone with chronic disease X will be their GP, their primary care physician, their family medicine doctor. Family medicine doctors are generally not equipped to be specialists in any one thing. They are essentially a triage system. The really good ones who have expertise with, more specific cases, even though they can't manage a chronic case necessarily, they maybe have enough good insight to refer appropriately.
Totally.
And the problem comes when that first line of interaction for a patient, the door is closed to them because, okay, you've got XYZ symptoms, not really sure what's going on. It could be this. And then instead of a referral on to something else, you get pushed back home, discharge, whatever. Yes. And then it's like a sort of a vicious model where, because patients instinctively want to trust their doctors. Oh, if the doctor says it's just, in my head, or it's just heavy periods, anxiety, or just this, I'll believe them. And then you sort of, maybe you can gaslight yourself into thinking that actually there's nothing wrong, and it takes you down this path of wondering why you feel this way. And then you learn stuff online, you realize, okay, what that doctor said was wrong, I need to look at this. And then, what happens then is you then lose trust in doctors as a whole, potentially, or the medical institution as a whole, because of that one interaction or two bad interactions. Yes. And once a patient loses trust, it becomes a dangerous game because, sort of compliance with medication or treatment algorithms might be affected, even if they are for the benefit of the patient. it opens the door to pseudoscientists and sort of dodgy characters, bad actors to come in and sell some miracle cure for that condition.
100%.
And ultimately, there's no progress in the patient's condition if that trust is lost because they may not want to seek further intervention from medical institutions. So it's very, very dangerous, especially that early interaction can be very dangerous.
I agree. And I think it has compounding effects down the road on mental health specifically. I mean, I'm 25 years into living with chronic illness, and I definitely gaslight myself. I will have times where I'll be sitting thinking, I'm not in that much pain. I'm totally fine, totally fine, totally fine. And then all of a sudden, I'll talk to my husband and he'll be like, Alex, no amount of pain is normal. Like, what's going on in your body? We need to talk about this. But I'm so accustomed to just brushing things underneath the rug because that's kind of what's happened periodically throughout my illness career. Illness career, it's kind of a weird way to phrase that. The illness career, that you kind of lose sight of trusting your own self too, which is a very, very weird consequence.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the most important thing that I like to, even if I don't know the answer, and it's a lot of the time, so don't know the answer to, can't give a patient a diagnosis. You can't say that this treatment is definitely going to work. Science lives in the gray many times, in maybes,
Yes.
probabilities, possiblies. And that's not always satisfying for a patient. And for me, the best gift that I could give is just knowledge and just being transparent and honest. And I think even if a patient with various chronic symptoms and unknowns went to a doctor and then doctor was like, you know what, I don't know what's going on. There is something going on with you because you're telling me there's something going on. I'm going to just take you at face value. And that's number one, take the person at face value. Why would they try to make something up or whatever? Okay. So number one is just being like, acknowledged, accepted, let's work together on this. And the second is, again, the transparency. Like, I have no idea what's going on. That is okay. Right. And it took me a while, and I'll hold my hands up as well. It took me a while as a doctor in my career as a doctor to actually figure out and realize it's okay to just say, I actually have no idea what's going on, but I'm going to work over 100% to figure out what's going on here. Like, we can work together on this. And I always felt that, it's like when you're having a conversation with someone, like a bad news conversation, silences are okay. Silences aren't awkward all the time. Sometimes they're perfect to let the news just sink in. And actually, silences aren't awkward. You don't need to fill in the silences with things. And that's the same thing I was doing in early days of being a junior doctor when I was talking to patients. I would feel I had to give them some sort of diagnosis, fill it with some waffle. But no, you can actually just say it. I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a layer almost of magical thinking that we all carry, that medicine is black and white, and that if you get sick, you go to the doctor, you get better, and you're on your merry way. But providers and patients alike, once you get into the system, you realize that's like utter bullshit. Very few things are black and white in medicine. And so exactly like what you're saying, just getting comfortable in that gray, it's not just the patients that have to do that, but the providers too, as they grow in their careers.
Yeah, and the real problem is sometimes the people who are most confident are the ones you maybe need to watch out for. And
I agree with that.
There isn't an answer for everything in medicine. There isn't a diagnosis for every single thing, certainly within our current understanding of science, So if someone has chronic symptoms and no one can figure out what's going on, that's okay to a degree in that at least people are trying to figure out what's going on and trying to exhaust every option out there, or at least trying to provide solutions that provide symptomatic relief, right? You can still not have a diagnosis, but be taken care of so that your pain, fatigue, brain fog, whatever symptoms you're experiencing are reduced as much as you can. That is also treatment, right? Symptom reduction. But the problem is that if then someone comes who's maybe not a doctor or not credible and is selling something which is like, this will cure X and this will sort it out. That's one of the dangers because, if I'm a chronic disease patient and someone's saying that for like $50, I can buy this and it's going to make me feel better, I'm going to be tempted to give it a go.
100%. And it's so bizarre that there's all these stipulations on pharmaceutical companies and how they advertise and market their drugs. And then there's people that have no credentials at all, can go on social media and say, I did this and this cured me and it will cure you too. When it's like, okay, we all know chronic illness is such an N of one. Despite the same diagnosis, all of our symptoms will be slightly different. Our experience will be slightly different because of our genetics, our gut microbiome, our chemistry in our bodies. So no, that's really not true. And it's terrifying that there's no regulation around that.
Yeah, that is worrying. And also, you raised some really good points there, because two people can have rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia, but no two people with those conditions are the same. I mean, even with your polyarthritis, like you said, you're an N of one, because that is shaped by genetic factors, and there'll be some differences in the actual, genetic predisposition of that disease, epigenetic factors based around your lifestyle and your experiences so far, based on, your age, your weight, your ethnicity, your dietary intake, your movement levels, the treatments that you've had. All of those things vary. You even mentioned things like the microbiome. We know that that's having a greater role on health in general. So how your microbiome may interact with pain signaling, with your immune system, with your gut function, with your brain function, hormone levels. So that all of that's going to vary so wildly between patients, even people with the two exact same condition. And even genetically, if the condition was exactly the same, no two people's gut microbiomes will be the same, or lifestyles will be the same, or diets will be the same. So actually, for all intents and purposes, they could be two completely distinct diseases.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And it almost makes me curious for how people then get guided online, because also when you're in that pre-diagnostic phase, and something resonates with you, it could be the wrong disease that's resonating with you, because symptoms are also shared between so many different diseases, like chronic fatigue, musculoskeletal pain, brain fog, nausea. Those are, I call them like flagship symptoms, like welcome to chronic illness. We all have those despite different diseases and diagnoses. And so I do get concerned about people commenting on my videos sometimes being like, man, I have all the symptoms that you've listed, and I just want to sit down, and I wish I could respond to everybody and say, yes, but that doesn't mean that you have PAN or lupus or endometriosis. It means that you probably have a chronic illness, but I don't know which one.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right there. I mean, sort of most chronic conditions, they aren't dictated by one symptom or even two symptoms or even three symptoms, right? And it's very difficult to just based on a couple of symptoms to say you have X. And, there could even be mimics in everyday life that could mimic certain traits, at least, of chronic illness. It's like similar to, if you think about something like ADHD and other neurodivergent conditions, there are some common traits of ADHD, like, potentially hyperfocus, inattentiveness, etc. There's a bunch of them. Can someone who doesn't have ADHD have some of those symptoms from time to time if they are sleep deprived, if they are tired, if they're hungry? Yes. So just because I have some degree of, hyperfocus or inattentiveness or something like that, I don't have ADHD. I've actually done a test for it. I don't have ADHD. But sometimes I may have some overlapping symptoms or traits of that. And it's similar with, chronic disease as well. Because, again, because of lifestyles, there could be certain components that sometimes we may think it could be that one thing. But again, you need to be thoroughly assessed is one thing. Because that will also be helpful, but also keeping like a symptom over time. The reason it's a chronic disease is because it plagues someone for not just days, not just weeks, for months and years. And it's something which crops up again and again. So you do not have a chronic disease if you've had that symptom for just a few days.
Correct. And I hope that gives people peace of mind.
Yeah, I mean, and even the definition of chronic, if you think about it, acute versus chronic, they are wildly different things. Like you need something for weeks for it to be chronic, just to get into that territory.
I totally agree. And actually, speaking of that, there was a video, the way that we met each other was a video that you stitched of mine. And it was, hey, if you, gosh, I don't remember even what my text overlay was, but it was something around the lines of, if you have anxiety, what's your chronic illness diagnosis now? There were so many comments on there going, well, gosh, I have anxiety. Does that mean I have a chronic illness? No, it absolutely does not. But anxiety is such a, I think, pivot point in a lot of the chronic illness diagnoses and moving towards getting seen, not getting seen, getting treatment, not getting treatment, and then just being mislabeled. So maybe we can talk a little bit about like why anxiety is a catch-all for so many of these things, and when it does kind of turn that corner of being, hey, this actually might be a chronic condition and not anxiety symptoms, because anxiety symptoms can mimic, like we said earlier, can mimic some actual like illness symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I think first of all, I think people sometimes could underestimate the not only physical but mental burden of having a chronic disease. So, I've had to take care of relatives over the years, be essentially primary carers for relatives over the years. And the mental burden, as well as the physical burden and financial burden of taking care of your friend or family is quite a toll. And so if you have a chronic disease, you are taking care of a whole person, which is yourself, right? So not only just, getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth and whatever, like that's the kind of baseline. Everyone has a shower, brushes teeth, makes food, whatever, but actually taking care of someone who is unwell, it's being that carer role is huge. So first of all, most people with chronic diseases are going to have a higher risk of mental health conditions, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever, because it's a big toll because, life isn't normal for vast periods of time. So having anxiety on its own doesn't mean you have a chronic disease, but often people with chronic diseases will have a higher risk of developing multiple mental health conditions. Right, and that is that link. There's an obvious reason for that link. There may be something genetic in there as well, which I think needs some more investigation.
Yeah.
Hormonally driven, gut microbiome driven, autoimmune driven. Who knows?
Fascinated to find
exactly.
out about
there's so many interesting things there. Yeah. So, but I think anxiety on its own, like again, that requires you to be assessed, to be diagnosed, and that's a sort of starting point. Could you have other things like beyond it being anxiety? Like I wouldn't want someone to think that these 5 symptoms are normal with anxiety. It's again, the doctor's or healthcare professional's role to ensure, is it anxiety plus something else? Because, okay, well, we mentioned endometriosis. If you have endometriosis, there is a good chance that your mental health is also going to be affected. Right.
Yes.
So you go to your doctor.
I can attest to that one.
Yeah. So you go to your doctor and, you outline some symptoms and you also outline mental health symptoms as well as physical health. And the doctor says, okay, sounds like anxiety, severe anxiety, because they've disregarded the physical because, it sounds like sort of heavy period related stuff. That's normal. But yeah, you've got anxiety as well. Let's treat you for the anxiety. You could think that, it's all of these symptoms are because of anxiety. And then you are potentially misdiagnosed, undertreated, underdiagnosed. And there could be a huge gap between you eventually seeking the right treatment. So I think whilst people shouldn't assume anxiety is whilst people shouldn't assume that all of their symptoms can be attributed to anxiety, in some cases, having ruled out other stuff thoroughly, you can get to that conclusion. But you need to make sure you've ruled out X, Y, Z.
Totally. And also, if it is anxiety, it can respond to different things like medications or lifestyle shifts.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't respond to any of those things, then perhaps maybe it's not anxiety or just anxiety.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, right? So all of these things that we're talking about, it's a spectrum.
Yes.
None of these conditions are just anything, because for a person, it's everything, right? It can completely overwhelmingly take over their life. Someone could have mild anxiety where it's like a 1 out of 10 on the scale. For another person, it could be 10 out of 10. So it is a chronic condition. Anxiety on its own is a chronic condition and, can be pretty overwhelming as well.
And it does have physiological symptoms.
100%.
I remember my first panic attack being like, I am 100% having a heart attack. This is what death feels like.
Yeah.
No, it can really just be that bad from a panic attack.
Yeah, I think the feeling of impending doom as the side effect of anxiety, potentially, people often report getting such a thing with certain types of medication. Amiodarone is one medication which we give IV in the hospital for certain heart rhythm abnormalities. That is often associated with the feeling of impending doom as it's being injected. Someone who has a heart attack often has that symptom reported as well, and severe panic attacks and anxiety attacks as well. And I've never experienced that feeling, but it sounds pretty awful. And
it's pretty terrible.
It's pretty terrible, and I think the visual analogy of that is like the Dementor sucking the life out of Harry Potter. That's like sort of the visual I have of the feeling of impending doom.
That's absolutely correct. Yes, perfect visual.
Yeah.
Just to draw like a comparison of how similar it can mimic other things, I remember the first time I took Humira, I injected myself, not a common symptom of Humira at all, took a bath, got into bed, 9 p.m. I was fully relaxed, and all of a sudden had this like, oh my God, something bad is happening. And my heart rate went up to 200 beats per minute just laying in bed. And I really thought I was having a heart attack. Called 911. Turns out they think it was a panic attack. Could be a panic attack, could be a medication reaction. We don't really know still to this day. And sometimes you just have to get comfortable not really knowing. But I can see it being a panic attack, candidly, because of that exact sensation of, oh God, something horrible is happening to me right now. And it's a terrible feeling to sit with.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate in my life. I've been spared of any chronic conditions, for the most part of my life. I've had family members who've been affected, and when you don't have anything wrong with you, right? Mm-hmm. I think I myself am not grateful enough, and I think people in general are not grateful enough for just good health. And when I say good health, is when you're not in pain, when you can just do normal things like sleep 8 hours a night without waking up, being able to just, go out and see friends, walk the dog, make a meal for yourself. All of those things are what most people would regard as baseline activities. Imagine not having the ability to do that. And, this is by no means a comparison point, but I remember this one time, I don't know what it was. I actually had this transient pancreatitis.
Oh, God.
It was really mild, and I picked it up late. I sort of self-diagnosed myself quite late, and I had severe abdominal pain for 24 hours. And I had no idea what it was, and I thought it was just something I'd eaten, like some takeaway that I'd eaten.
Yeah.
And the next day it was, I couldn't sleep at all. And the next day it was still like almost as severe. And I was like, I should probably just get it checked out. And I did. We just got some blood tests done. And my amylase level, my blood test was high. It wasn't super high, but it was high enough to suggest that I'd had pancreatitis when the pain was like severe.
Yeah.
And it had slightly improved the next day, and I just picked it up late. And, it was like sort of that whole week of having that pain, and I couldn't do any of my normal things. And I was like, this is terrible. And the next week when I felt sort of somewhat normal again and was doing normal things, I was like, damn, am I grateful for this,
Yes. That exact feeling of that, all the symptoms lifting, is how I describe like the first 24 hours on prednisone, when all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, this is what normal people feel like all the time. This is incredible. Yeah. And then of course, you get the prednisone spirals afterwards. You don't sleep, you don't feel good, you get mood swings, blah, blah, blah. But that first 24-hour period is when I realize, honestly, how bad I've been feeling, I think, and how good relief feels. And that can be either incredibly sad or incredibly motivating to say, this feeling I can get, I just have to stay so focused and attached to getting better.
Yeah, I think having a read of what a breakthrough or a pain-free or a symptom-free period could look like like you said, I'm sure that's incredibly motivating to
Gives you so
how
much
can I
hope.
get there? What do I need to do? You know,
Yes.
how can we work together to get there? Whether it's diet, lifestyle, medication, how can we get there and maximize the time spent there?
Yes, 100%. And I think when you can hold it as hope, that's when you pour into research and you go try all the things that maybe you had written off as woo woo or
Yeah.
wouldn't work for you because you're too complex. And I've said it time and time again. In 2022, I was at a very low point and said, God, every doctor in the world has told me I'm so complicated, nothing's going to work for me. The only thing working is Cytoxin, which is a pretty aggressive chemotherapy drug. And then all of a sudden, I just kind of got out of my own way. I had this great life chat with my dad where he said, just because certain things aren't working for you right now doesn't mean there's not things down the line that will work. We've got to just try everything. And opening that doorway open and trying other things gave me the relief. And so I think getting to that point is really important. But once you're there, figuring out how to research correctly and like find things that are really true versus just kind of BS on the internet it can be really difficult. So maybe we dive a little bit into that on like, how do you actually research things and know that they're trustworthy, especially now in a period of deepfakes, which you literally just went through this last
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, the deepfake stuff, I would say for most people, it should, if you look carefully at deepfakes, they are, relatively easy to spot. On first glance, they could be convincing. If you take your time, you can spot, errors in the deepfake, but it's improving all the time. So I think if we have the same conversation in a few months' time or next year, those glaring deepfake errors which make them look fake will be gone. I truly suspect that. But I think looking for sources of information, it's difficult online. There are more kind of AI-based apps which are coming up, which help to allow you to read and find credible information. Open Evidence, Consensus AI, these are sort of easy platforms you can use. And, hopefully even things like these OpenAI, ChatGPT bake in features which allow people to search up health topics without hallucinated references and without made up, garbled information. Because
Yes.
I think that's a great tool for people to use. I use a lot of AI in my workflow for like research purposes, but then at this point, because I don't trust ChatGPT fully, I then cross-reference manually to check whether this PubMed article actually exists, is it a real reference, and I'll use it as like a research intern. Right. And I think that's how you should be using AI, as like your personal assistant to help to optimize, number crunching stats and looking up certain things, not as a source of advice. But I do think that it can be a useful function to get some useful tidbits of information for health purposes. Right now, I would be too worried about the hallucinations and the lack of trusted information you can get on there, because it's siphoning information from everywhere. It's siphoning information from Reddit.
Garbage. Yeah.
Yeah. From, like Healthline, WebMD, which often don't have the best quality sourcing. Yep. So yeah, garbage in, garbage out. Shit in, shit out. So we need to put better stuff in there for better stuff to come out. So I think it can be a great tool down the line. Right now, trusted creators are trusted source of information online. So doctors and scientists online who I trust, and you can generally trust them. If multiple other people are saying similar sounding things, that's a sort of a good signal. If someone is speaking in absolutes, yes or no, tricky to trust them fully. If someone is giving nuance, maybe possibilities, likely, that sounds more reasonable and less sensationalized. Charity websites are usually pretty good when it comes to, backing up claims and having good information. And honestly, the best information you can probably get as someone with a chronic illness would be those hyper-focused forums where people are giving their life experiences. Science is great, but you cannot compete with life experience. And if you've got hundreds or thousands of people giving their life experience, that's powerful.
I completely agree. And I think it really can give you places to go turn over new rocks that you didn't even know existed, which is incredibly powerful. One thing that I do see a lot of is people with chronic illnesses, like the rise of the chronic illness influencer. I'm putting that in quotes. Some of those people are then turning and saying, here's what I did, mimic what I did. I can be your health coach. I can help you feel better. And that's just very aspirational. I don't want to write everybody off because I think it comes from probably a really good place. But I think it's really scary because it gives people a false sense of hope, or they start integrating things into their life that might be terrible for their body. Like we discussed earlier, we all have different bodies. So a supplement that worked for somebody might be incredibly toxic for your own body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're getting slowly into the age of personalized medicine, where it's difficult to recommend always blanket, sort of coverall statements for every single thing. Even for people who don't have a chronic illness, we're slowly moving away from that by saying everyone should be taking X, Y, and Z because everyone is different. I think even more so what's important for people with chronic illness is that, the blanket recommendations are even less useful for those, specific cohorts of people for precisely those reasons. Such a vast constellation of symptoms which could be different. And so, even within, certain conditions which may respond to dietary changes, one dietary change doesn't mean another person will enjoy the same benefits. Like there was a recent recent trial that looked at a low FODMAP diet in people with endometriosis, severe endometriosis. A large proportion of people in those trials, it was a small trial, I think 30 odd people, so not huge, but it gives us some insights. And a lot of people in that trial responded to the low FODMAP diet and had fewer GI symptoms, less cramping, bloating, stuff like that for, the GI symptoms of endometriosis. But for other people with endometriosis, it may not work. The low FODMAP thing may not work. It's not a panacea.
True.
But I think simply using these as tools, and if they're relatively low risk tools, like dietary interventions are relatively low risk, I would say, try it. If it doesn't work, move on to the next thing. So use them as stepping stones to try things, not as mantras for your life.
I love it. Let it be curiosity lead you. But you're right. Don't let it be a mantra for your life. That's perfectly stated. I think B12 is another really good example of that. B12 makes most people feel a lot better. You can also have way too high of B12 and then have crippling nerve pain. So being cautious and conscientious of listening to your own body, learning to trust your body, I think it's really, really critical when you're being curious and like a little scientist on yourself to see what does work and doesn't work for building your own protocol for yourself.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful because some things you try could be higher risk. Supplements are still chemicals. So just be careful. Do they interact with other things that you take? Do they worsen the side effect profile or a medication that you've been prescribed? Because they're not risk-free supplements always.
Agreed. And you actually made a really great video I don't remember when it was, this year, talking about how important it is to take certain supplements or vitamins together or separately, or how long of a duration you need in between things. And I think education like that and constant exposure to the intricacies of a vitamin or a supplement helps people understand more, this isn't just like a little change I'm making. If we look back at the history of medicine, herbs were the same thing as medicines. That is what it was. And medicine today is basically just the chemical process of finding the same thing, just a little bit stronger and more potent of those herbs. So they are powerful. They do put changes into our body, and we have to be careful.
Yeah, even if you think about some of those herbs, and people often associate herbs are natural equals safe, natural equals side effect free. No.
Not at all.
They are still very powerful things. Like, for example, most people would accept that green tea is very safe. So naturally, green tea extract, by association, is also safe. In high doses, green tea extract, which you find in a lot of supplements, can pose a risk of liver injury, right? And we're seeing a surge in liver injury leading to liver failure due to supplements, having
Honestly,
all
not
sorts of
surprised
dodgy
by
things
that.
and high dose things which could cause, liver injury. And I think people need to be mindful of that, especially some of these herbal supplements. They can interact with liver enzymes and increase the risk of side effects of medication you're taking. So, all of these things have interactions. Even if you want to start these things, just run it by your doctor.
Yes. Number one thing, run it by your doctor. They have tools to see the contraindications or crossover of anything, and then you don't have to go into it blindly and you can
Yeah,
feel more comfortable and confident about whatever you're doing, which I think is
yeah,
great.
exactly.
And you're right, like natural does not mean safe. Like alcohol, weed, those are all essentially natural things that come from the
Asbestos is
ground.
natural. So,
Yes. Okay, so talking about natural versus not natural, maybe we can go through some like common misconceptions that the internet has made just virally popular, and we can myth bust some of those things.
yeah, this thing online I've been seeing that if you can't pronounce it, it's not safe,
I hate that.
right?
I
Which is
literally
like
hate. I can't pronounce so many different things.
it's this sort of chemophobia, the fear of chemicals.
Yeah.
And if you looked at fruits which exist in the real world, like blueberries, bananas, if you broke down the chemical structure of these things, they could sound pretty scary to the untrained person. Well, most people wouldn't know the full chemical breakdown of blueberries, right?
True.
If I said that in a banana, you get fructooligosaccharides, for someone that might sound, oh, that sounds like some sort of chemistry experiment. It sounds like some sort of weird acid or chemical, But fructooligosaccharides are literally just a type of fiber. It's a type of carbohydrate. It's a sugar, which is actually a prebiotic for your gut microbiome. It's beneficial for your gut health. So there's nothing inherently worrying about fructooligosaccharides. It's just several letters long and it sounds abnormal because most people don't use it in their lexicon day to day. And I think people are unnecessarily worried by chemicals like that. It doesn't need to be scary or villainous or demonized in any way.
I agree. I kind of think it's the result of the pendulum swinging. We have such a movement, at least in the United States, going on right now of really looking at like the ingredients that are in our foods that we eat. And I think we can all call a spade a spade. American food that is processed is definitely not good for us. Like that blanket statement right there, probably not good for us. But just because an ingredient is complicated or hard to say does not mean that it's necessarily bad. But I think it's out of this fear that's come out of diving into, like what was in my Lunchable that I ate in kindergarten? What was in the Special K cereal that I ate? You're like, yeah, that was not good shit for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I encourage people to, read ingredient labels, look at the back of the pack. I think it's a great form of education to know what's in your food, right? I think that's the least that we should expect from ourselves. And I personally have got into this habit over many years. What are the calories of something? What's the protein? What's the fiber? What's the kind of sugar in it? I want to know what's in that. And there's nothing wrong with people wanting that level of scrutiny over what's going inside their body. And that's everyone's right.
Totally.
But also, you don't need to split the hairs and be like, this is really worrying because I can't read this chemical. This sounds dodgy. Because again, beyond that, you have to understand that the dose is the poison. Certain things at a certain dose are fine. At a different dose, they're not fine. And that's how we work with medications that we give people. Paracetamol, for most people, if you take 1 gram or 1,000 milligrams every 6 hours, that's fine, right? It's safe. If you take 1 gram every hour, it's not safe. So there is that line, and same with water. For most people, drinking 2 to 3 liters of water a day is fine. If you're drinking 10 liters of water in a day, that's probably not fine. So even something like water, which is generally, we are 70% water, you can overdo something. So, there's so many different factors which decide how safe or good something is, even when it comes to food.
I think it's such a like salient point that needs to be really just understood and digested, because we do have people on the internet and I don't know if this is like not PC for me to call them that, but like the medical medium who just kind of spews out blanket statements about anything not natural being bad, or like normal medical tests being dangerous, like a blood draw. So, and being like discerning is really, really important here.
Yeah, and I think you ultimately need to find out what's the motive behind someone fear-mongering something. Are they
Yes.
selling something which is the solution to the problem that they are flagging? If so, that's a conflict of interest, we'd say. We see that in medical studies that are funded by industry all the time. If
Yeah.
a certain industry selling a solution to the problem is funding studies, funding the research, right? That's a conflict of interest. And
Yes.
that would be declared. And you'd probably take the results with a pinch of salt if you saw conflicts of interest like that. So if someone was
100%.
saying that X is bad, right? You need to stop doing X or stop eating X, but don't worry, I've got the solution. This is the anti-X, and I'm selling you that for $100 a week. That's a conflict of interest, and they are fear-mongering you to then buy their product. So I think that should also be taken into consideration when listening to information online.
Yeah. And I think there's also a split. Like, there's sensationalized clickbait. I've caught myself doing it before, like, stop doing XYZ, stop diagnosing yourself, stop chasing a diagnosis. But the goal out of what I'm saying is let's open the conversation of why a diagnosis doesn't need to be your North Star, why symptom management and feeling better should be your North Star. Of course, there's a lot of intricacies and nuances in that in and of itself, but that's different than someone saying, stop getting your blood drawn because it's killing you.
Yeah,
In my opinion.
absolutely. I think, you're opening up conversations and, trying to educate people, whereas
Yeah.
people can be also shilling products or courses or something.
I agree. Okay, I wrote down a couple misconceptions that I would love to get your take on. Okay. The first one is one I think I've seen you talk about before, actually. Endometriosis and the recent study that's come out about kind of our gut health and different kind of infections and maybe that being a root cause. Do you think endometriosis has a root cause?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything has a cause. And I don't think endometriosis has one cause. I think it's very likely multifactorial. There'll be a genetic component, an epigenetic component, a microbiome component, an autoimmune component, which was also driven partly by the genetics. Exposures to environmental things may also contribute to incidents, lifelong incidents, and progression of endometriosis potentially. So yeah, I think there are so many different aspects there to take into account. We just don't really know. And even what I said right now may be wrong when, in 5, 10, 15 years, someone finds out the actual cause of endometriosis and then everything could be wrong. But I think it's a very complex interplay between gut microbiome, autoimmune, immune system, genetics.
I think that's a great answer, and I definitely agree. Okay, next one is detoxes and cleanses. Do they work and are they for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, detox and cleanses, they sound like a sort of fancy term, but ultimately, you shouldn't be needing them. Between your colon, your liver, and your kidneys, you have all the inbuilt biological detox machines that you have. If you need external support with detox, you're probably in a pretty bad situation with at least failure of one or more organs, and then you'll be having artificial filters and machines plugged into you to do the detox for you. So there is no real thing as a detox. The sort of the closest you could come to a detox is if you are prepping for a colonoscopy and the doctors give you enemas and laxatives, and then your colon
The worst
is being
beverage
fully
ever.
washed out. Yeah.
I agree. What's the difference between like a colon GI detox versus like the detoxification effect of, say, an infrared sauna or exercise even on our bodies?
Well, I mean, sort of the colonoscopy, if someone's giving you laxatives and whatever, they're clearing out your colon. That's neither good nor bad on a physiological level. That is just something that needs to happen so that the person doing the colonoscopy can visualize fully the lining of your colon so they don't miss any small lumps or bumps. When you sweat out during a sauna session, exercise, there's a physiological benefit that you get on a cellular level. that you don't get from taking laxatives or whatever. So, things like saunas are great for health. Exercise is even better for health. So yeah, there's a clear difference on a cellular level between the two.
I love it. And speaking of gastric things, there are so many different constipation hacks online. Are any of them like the Bible or North Star?
I think a lot of them I've seen online are pretty effective, to be honest, especially like the super viral ones, like, the internal shower with the chia seeds. That's great. Chia
Yes.
seeds are great.
Amazing.
Eating kiwis with the skin on. I've been talking about that for years. Also love it. There's good evidence suggesting that kiwis are also pretty effective, that have some sort of laxative effect because of the high fiber content and the actinidin enzymes. And even dragon fruit, that's another popular remedy as well. Dragon fruit has specific prebiotics and a high fiber content, which is also good for your bowels. But these are all like useful little hacks. But sometimes someone may need an investigation into why they are having constipation, right? Constipation is a symptom, not a diagnosis. So what is the root cause for the constipation beyond these hacks?
I love that. So constipation, for what it's worth, is actually how I found you because I deal with awful constipation from all my chronic illnesses and the medicines I take. So keep making those videos. They are awesomely helpful. Similar note, bloating. Is bloating always indicative of a problem?
No, I mean, bloating can be a physiological response to certain things, life events. So after a meal, you can have like a little bit of bloating, which is, and I'm thinking it's not painful and it's transient, self-limiting. You can get bloating during periods. That can also be normal to some degree because of the fluctuations in hormones, altered electrolyte balance, contractions of colon, etc. You can get bloated during pregnancy. There's certain life stages where that's can be normal at certain times. When you should start to worry about bloating is when it's painful, it's long-lasting, it's causing severe quality of life impairment, and then you need to figure out what's going on. Now, there are so many different causes of bloating, literally hundreds of causes of bloating, from SIBO to IBS to diarrhea to endometriosis, electrolyte imbalances, you're having too much salt in your diet, or you're wearing tight clothing. Some fixes are easy, some fixes are not easy, and it's very hard and it's chronic and may never be fixed. But yeah, it really depends. Like, it can be from benign to really horrible.
Absolutely agree. And kind of speaking of swelling and salt, this is my last one. Cortisol. Cortisol seems to be like the biggest buzzword on TikTok right now. Living in the chronic illness space, I'm like, oh God, yep, we're familiar with cortisol. Prednisone, moon phase, whole 9 yards. What does cortisol actually look like for a normal person, and when do you need to start worrying about it?
Yeah, I mean, cortisol is it's a stress hormone which provides a physiological role. Everyone has cortisol, and it's usually controlled in most people within a specific range. Cortisol can sometimes rise to allow us to, run, respond to a stressful event. Sometimes chronically, if it's high because of stress or some other physical insult, that can be detrimental, and that can help, encourage the breakdown of muscle and have all sorts of negative physiological effects on the human body. And it can increase the rate of visceral fat deposition. It can increase the rate of, wrinkles and, have all these sort of aesthetic impacts as well. But I don't think this sort of, when people talk about cortisol belly and cortisol face, it's sort of taking a kernel of truth and spinning it out of control. Most people do not have an issue with cortisol, and if someone does have an issue with cortisol, they likely have a condition like Addison's disease or something like that. That's a proper condition where you've got abnormal cortisol regulation.
Yeah, and it can be periodic too. Like, I think I just said it, but like Cushing's disease can be transient. You don't have to have it forever. It's also not technically just like a diagnosis, but it's a symptom of your medication at times. Probably not good to say a blanket statement there. But it can come and go, and I think all of us can interact with it, but it doesn't mean that you need to like swap your entire life upside down.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of internet myth busting and whatnot, I would love to go into what your algorithm is currently showing you, what is driving you up a wall, and what are you really happy that you're seeing right now?
To be honest, like I curate my feed, so I kind of like the stuff I see is usually stuff I want to see, and
That's probably healthy.
yeah, most of the stuff that I see, which is laughable and idiotic, is actually now I see it in the form of stitched videos from other people that I follow. They'll stitch something ludicrous and I'll see it on their feeds actually. And those sort of original videos where it's like, oh my God, this is complete ridiculous nonsense. I don't even see them anymore. So I don't know. I follow a lot of, creative people like who are videographers or storytellers or photographers and stuff like that who are making interesting videos, or sort of comedians or stuff like that, like just like what I want to use social media for my own purposes, just like learn new things, get interested by great video and photography and storytelling, and so actually it's not very medical at all, and so it's actually pretty nice.
I have made a separate account so I can have that where I follow like dogs only and exclusively dogs. But maybe I should consider just putting that on my own feed and getting the dog content there instead of seeing the utter BS that sometimes I see.
I'm more interested in providing value than bringing down someone else to make my point. I even if I see like a kind of like a silly video or something, I have no interest or intent to bring that original person down. I just use it as a point to provide some education.
And open up a conversation.
Exactly.
I see a lot of people in your comments actually having really great discussions, and I think walking away probably learning something.
Yeah, and that's all I want to do. Like, and I think sometimes some of this debunk content online can border on name calling, like playground level, back and forth. Like, you're terrible. No, you're terrible.
So
and I have no interest in, wasting brain resources in that sort of negative space.
I completely agree, and I also think that that like functional medicine or holistic medicine versus Western medicine argument that can exist online is really silly. Like, I think if the North Star is making people feel better, why not come at it at a place of compassion and like helping each other learn and grow instead of attacking each other and like tearing everything down?
Yeah, agreed. I think there's commonalities between both, because we all want wellness, optimization of health.
Yeah.
I think there's good things to take from both. There's a lot of stuff which functional medicine does well from a sort of patient empathy and 360 care point of view that Western medicine has some catching up to do, and Western medicine has obviously that fallback of evidence base and rigor, which sometimes functional medicine doesn't quite always live up to. And I think there's an interesting world where both should meet, or at least certain tangents of both should meet. So I think it's a false dichotomy to assume it's one or the other, but it's both.
I completely agree, and I kind of think it's like functional medicine aims at going to the root cause. Western medicine aims at protecting anything in the future. No organ failure. Let's keep your body at least where it is, and if we can try to make it get a little bit better and maybe go backwards a little bit, that's amazing. So if you pair those together, you get like the full timeline and spectrum. It's like kind of the goal.
And I think sometimes egos can get in the way, as with most things.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, and to wrap it up, I love to just have a very silly direction for people. I love duvet days. That is how I give myself permission to not feel guilty when I'm resting and to fully commit to letting my body just relax, take the rest that it needs, and so I can try to get some kind of like spoon recovery. If you're not familiar with spoon recovery, it's like this awesome analogy for people with chronic illnesses to explain their energy units. And for duvet days, I like to binge TV shows or movies, anything that makes me laugh, keeps my attention, or distracts me. So I am wondering if you have anything I should add to my list that is currently captivating you.
I'm currently watching season 2 of The Sandman on Netflix.
I haven't heard of this cool.
One. I'm super into like mythology, sci-fi kind of stuff, right? And so I'm watching it with my wife at the moment, and it's basically it's super cool because the Sandman, Morpheus, the king of dreams, king of sleep, it's kind of like him and his battle against like other deities and other manifestations of huge concepts like death, destiny, the king of hell. And it's maybe I'm not doing the best job describing it, but it's
sounds
great.
right up my alley. I can't believe I haven't watched this yet.
Yeah, it is so good. Like, and obviously Morpheus, the king of dreams, is like this really stiff upper lip, like minimal expression British guy. And it's just really cool. Like, it's like, yeah, it's just like the sort of storytelling and the visuals. And it's just so nice because I just love that like mythology type stuff, you know?
Me too. It's so fascinating. Did you ever watch the, gosh, I'm going to butcher the name of it. It was on Disney Marvel. Moon Knight, Night King.
Yeah, Moon Knight. I sort of never got fully into it. It would have been right up my street, but
Yes.
I don't know. I just didn't get into it as much as the other Marvel things, you know?
Interesting. I'm surprised because that one's kind of mythological. Non-mythological, but sci-fi for sure. Have you watched Three Body Problem?
Oh, yeah. If you like the Three Body Problem, I would highly recommend you read the 3 books because
Yes, I just bought the first
they
one.
will blow your mind. Those 3
can't
books, I've
wait.
actually got them back there. Honestly, you will feel such a crushing disappointment once you finish the book that you've finished them and there's no more things like that which exist. That's when you
Yes.
know it's a certified banger. Like, I
totally
read
agree.
the 3 books.
Yes.
They blow the TV series away.
Okay. I bought the book. I just have to now commit to reading it. I started one
Incredible.
chapter and I was like, I know this is going to be a building one where I have to get through like the first couple of chapters to really
100
get
pages.
into
You
it.
need to get
but
through 100 pages of book
Okay.
1 and then, wow.
Amazing. Well, if you have any more sci-fi, feel free to shoot me an email or text.
Oh,
I
yeah,
am
for sure.
an avid sci-fi girly. I went to NASA space camp when I was in 6th grade. So
Ooh.
really love all that stuff. All right. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking chronic illness with me. And thank you for being such an advocate in the space, not just for chronic illness, but for women's health, pain management, and all things that plague each of us as people that we can strive to get a
It's
little bit better.
been great connecting with you and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. See you next week. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me for another week of Calling in Sick. As a reminder, I would love for y'all to like, follow, subscribe, save, share with a friend, do all of the things. It truly helps grow this community and it helps these episodes reach the people that need them the most, whether that's for an educational piece, to have a little laugh, or to not feel so alone. As a reminder, Calling in Sick sits on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and anywhere else where you can find your listens. From the bottom of my heart, I absolutely love you guys. Thank you so much for calling in sick with me every Monday. It's been an honor and a pleasure so far, and I can't wait to continue. I can't wait to continue building this community with y'all. Love you.